Now we're in the process where we've had the second fermentation happening in the bottle. The bottles are laying on their sides with the yeast active, doing the second fermentation. When the second fermentation is done, the yeast die. It takes several weeks, up to 3 months actually, for the second fermentation to complete. But after that, the wine lays on its side with the yeast in contact with the wine for 1.5 to 6 years, depending on the product. So what happens during this time on the yeast? Big changes happen. When the yeast dies, even though the yeast are no longer living, it's left active biochemicals, enzymes that are in the wine that will work to break down the body of the yeast. The yeast is composed of proteins, polysaccharides, and fatty acids. The major component, however, that impacts the flavor and aroma are the proteins, which the enzymes break down these proteins into principal amino acids, not only affecting flavor and aroma, but also mouthfeel and texture. So this is second fermentation in the bottle with the yeast settled to the very bottom of the bottle. So this is how the wine looks while it's aging in the warehouse. So one of the trickiest parts of the method traditionale is getting the yeast out of the bottle. So whether it's aged for 1.5 years with the classic tier, 3 years for the reserve tier, or 5 years for étoile, we have to get the yeast out of the bottle. This is a riddling rack. This is a device that allows the bottles to be tilted and tapped. So you start off with a bottle that's horizontal and end up in about 2 weeks with a bottle that is vertical, and all the yeast has been corralled into the little plastic cup called the bedule. It's inserted in the bottle, and then it gets the crown cap. Close it off. This process of knocking the yeast down into the necks of the bottles is called remoulage, or riddling in English. The person doing this process would be the riddler. And you know, it's a job description that doesn't have a lot of career growth, and there are very few people doing riddling today. And the main reason is it's really a job better spent for machines. So I'd like to take you now to our lower cellar and show you some machines for doing the riddling. So as opposed to riddling in those racks, these are riddling machines. We call these VLMs, which stands for very large machines. Each one of these boxes holds 480 bottles. 8 boxes is held by a machine. So multiply it yourself. 8 times 480 bottles, that's a lot of bottles, all being riddled at the same time. Where it takes by hand doing riddling, it takes 2 weeks. By machine, 3 to 4 days. So it greatly expedites the production of the wine. And we can't tell any difference, the hand or machine, in the taste of the wine.